Okay, I have some gloss cherry red paint here. I'm going to put a coat of red on the outside of this cabinet. I put the casters on the bottom of the cabinet before I painted it because I thought it would keep it off the ground without me really having to move it so much. This will probably go much faster with a larger roller, but this is the first thing I grabbed: a small tray and a small roller, so just make do. Okay, I'm just going to continue on painting the other sides. Be back in a couple of minutes. So on the insides of the cabinet, I'm going to use this pine on either side of the inside of the cabinet. And on top of the piece of this pine is going to sit 1/4 inch plywood, and then we're going to have more pine, 1/4 inch plywood, more pine, 1/4 inch plywood all the way up. So I needed to cut enough to have enough for 16 shelves. So I have 32 of these. I'm just going to run over some of the edges that I cut with some sandpaper just to get rid of some of the little splinters. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and I'll be back in a couple minutes. Okay, I sanded all of the edges on all the pine, and the next thing I want to do is pre-drill some holes, 2 holes in each piece. The wood's going to be mounted on the inside of the cabinet, screwed to the plywood. I don't want to just drive screws right through the pine because it's going to split. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-drill some holes here in preparation to driving the screws into it when I fasten it inside the cabinet. Okay, I'm going to continue with each one. I wanted to show you real quick what I decided to do is stack 2 together. Pre-drill 2 pieces of wood at the same time. Okay, I'm going to continue down the stack of wood. Alright, so what I'm going to do next is I have the case up on my workbench, and here is the pre-drilled and cut pine. So I'm going to mount the first two pieces of pine on either side, one on this side and one on the opposite side. there's the other one. You grab a case. Okay. This is how the cases are going to fit in the cabinet. One case goes in. Next is going to go a piece of plywood. It's going to sit on here, a 1/4 inch piece of plywood. And then 2 more pieces of pine all the way up. I cut the wood, the bottom piece wide enough so I'd have a little bit more room left and right of the case. I didn't want it to be a snug fit, just in case I pick up similar cases that are around the same size but not exactly, maybe a little bit bigger. So next up we're going to cut the plywood. So the case is 13 inches deep. The plywood really doesn't need to go to the very end. In fact, it might actually be better if it doesn't. So this way I don't have to reach my hand in to grab the handle. So I think I'm going to stop the plywood shelf just shy of the edge here, so about 10 inches. So each piece of plywood is going to be 10 inches deep at 18.5 inches wide. So let me cut a couple pieces of plywood and we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, I cut a piece of scrap plywood, 1/4 inch plywood that I had laying around here. This looks like an oak veneer plywood. And what I'm going to do is get some of these edges off. I know I said 18.5, but I actually decided to cut this to 18.25. Lay it in here. Doesn't need to be real tight again. Just enough to be able to separate each case. So next up, there's going to be 2 more pieces of pine. Just going to let that sit in there. Doesn't have to be, the oak shelf or the plywood shelf does not have to be super tight in there. So I'm just going to let that sit in there as I screw in the next 2 pieces of pine. Okay, there's the one on one side. Okay, we grab another box. That's the second box. We're going to continue with another piece of 1/4 inch plywood for the shelving, and then we'll continue all the way up. See you in a little bit. Alright, I just cut another piece of scrap plywood that I have here around my workshop. It's warped a little bit, but that's fine. This is 10 inches by 18.25. So we'll put the next shelf in here. Now I also have some other scrap that I cut. And it wasn't quite 10 inches deep. It was 9 3/4, but I don't want to waste it, so I cut that to the width, and we're going to use that as well. So now we have 2 more sides that are going to go in. And be sure you're using short enough screws here that you don't drill through to the outside of the cabinet. If you're doing this with different thickness plywood or different thickness pine on the sides, just be cautious of the length screws you're using. Okay, one of the reasons that I used pine here also is because I wanted to make these shelves adjustable. I have a larger plastic bin, which I'll show you in a minute, and I want to be able to remove these shelves so that I can fit the larger plastic bin in there. Okay? Now, you could use dados cut into the wood. I wanted to do the pine here to be able to show you another way that you can kind of do dados. If you don't have a router or you don't have a dado blade, this whole project really could be done with hand tools. I'm using my miter saw and my table saw to just kind of save some time, and also cut the wood into smaller chunks. But you could also do this with a circular saw or even a hand saw, and you could also cut dados in the plywood on the side. I chose to use this because I wanted to show folks an alternate method to be able to have the functionality of a dado without actually cutting the dados into the wood. So we're effectively creating our own dados by stacking the pine strips here with wood in between. So here's the larger box that I have. So you could fit a shelf in here and continue this size box all the way up. One of the things that I wanted to do with this parts cabinet is to have the ability to be able to put the larger box wherever I want. So instead of just saying I'm going to have 2 or 3 at the bottom, I wanted to be able to have this filled with the smaller size, or I'd be able to put the larger size in. So if I remove a box, and actually let's do it this way. Let me put one up here. Let's take the bottom one out. Take the bottom shelf out. Fit the larger box in there. So essentially one large box would fit in the space of the 2 smaller ones. One here, one here. So I'm going to continue cutting some more plywood all the way up, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes.